So this is the topic of today, respect as a path of growth. And please, if you have any questions or comments, just post them in the just put them in the chat of the Zoom, and then we can talk about it in a moment. For now, I cannot see everything because I'm in the PowerPoint already. So let's talk about this word respect for a moment, because when we think of respect, there's just so many words, there's so many meanings to it, right? I mean, a while back, actually, I read a few articles on in a national newspaper in Netherlands. It has a bit of a philosophical slant. It's called the Trouw, Dagblad Trouw, and it had a while back. It had an entire part of the newspaper dedicated to the question, "What is respect?" which I thought was very interesting. They even put out a challenge for people to come up with a good essay to define what respect is, but everybody seems to write a different thing. Nobody seemed to be able to agree, which is funny because in a research that was done in the Netherlands a while back as well, in Groningen, in the north of in the university in the north, they found out that the one quality, the one virtue, or the one quality that Dutch people appreciated the most was respect. They even asked people with a immigrant background, like people who came from a Muslim country and already lived in the Netherlands for a while. They asked them, what is your number one virtue or number one quality? And they also said respect. But everybody seems to think of respect as something different. A while back, even longer back, there was a commercial. I remember it about 20 years ago. It was a commercial. I think it was an ad for some late night show or something. And they had a guy who was walking with headphones on, but they didn't. I kind of betrayed the point of the joke already, because it was somebody walking, and he was saying, like, he had long hair, right? So you couldn't see his headphones, and they were saying, like, I respect everybody's opinion. I really appreciate everybody's opinion. Everybody should say what they want to say. And then at the end, they showed that he was wearing headphones, and then he said, "Because I'm wearing headphones, so that's okay." You mean you can have your opinion, you can say whatever you want, because I'm wearing headphones anyway. So that is not really respect now, is it? Or is it? And that's maybe a few questions we can ask. Because everybody, when talking about respect, we tend to point fingers at other people. In Thai, they use the word virtue, they use kuna tham. But there is also the expression kuna tong tham. You have to do it. That is not the same. So we have to distinguish these things and not make it a cliche out of it, you know. So let's just look at what the meaning is in the Latin language, where it originates from. The word respect originates from the word respicere, which actually means looking back, or you could say looking at something more deeply. In the Indian language, which is has a lot of impact on Indochina or the Southeast Asian region, there's the word karu, or in where we have the word kalu, which actually means heavy. And this also refers to respect, like really being very fully aware of something. The word heavy refers to the awareness, the strong awareness of something. And karu is also the origin of the word karawa, which means respect, and also the word, the meaning the word guru, of course, which is widely known these days. Guru comes from the same meaning. So why do we talk about respect in this way? Well, respect works like a filter, you could say. It is sort of awareness, and it works like a filter to learn about another person's good qualities deeply. That is the way respect should work. It works like a sort of filter. You really look at somebody's good qualities, and then the bad qualities, you might be aware of them, but you just put those aside for the moment and really try to look at what you can acknowledge and see what you can really appreciate in that person. But it could also refer to objects. Like objects could also be extended respect to, right? Like even in the West, we extend respect to the national flag in most countries. We don't just throw those on the floor or something. And we in religious context, we grant some respect to religious objects. I mean, these are just objects. They are just made out of, made out of certain elements, certain materials, but we still grant some respect to them because they have some meaning to them, and which we think is very important. Oddly, that's not the only thing, of course, that we have come to agree that it has some meaning. Even money, for example, is usually not worth the value that we give to it. I mean, if you really think about it, a bank bill, like a bill like you used to pay, that is not actually really worth that value, but we agree that it has a certain value. In the same way, a Buddha image like this one, it is actually not really the Buddha, but we agree that it has this value for us. And then we use it as a sort of object of respect, not because it can really grant our wishes or can help us, but because it helps us to connect with certain mental qualities, certain memories that we might have of the Buddha, or certain beliefs or dedication and devotion that we have. And in a similar vein, if you are a believer of some other religion, then they will have similar objects. Even in Islam, there may not be any objects to honor, but there are certain writings or certain symbols. Then we come to abstract things. Sometimes there are also abstract things that we respect. For example, one can respect meditation without actually using a certain object for that, but it's something you hold high in your heart. So this is, of course, all quite easy to agree on. This is respect. But the point I'm trying to make is that this deep realization, that is a very key word when we talk about respect in Buddhism. A deep realization that helps to work like a filter. You don't always have to look at all the mistakes people make, but we look at the good sides. There's all kinds of friendship in life. Sometimes we meet people who are morally and spiritually less far than us. We might, out of a sort of sympathy and compassion, associate with these people and help them on their way, help them on the spiritual path. Sometimes there may be certain people who are very new to these things, and then we help them. But most of the time, most people that we associate with will be similar to us. They might not be, they might not be very different from us spiritually or in their progress on the spiritual path. So, but then it's good to inspire each other and to allow things to run smoothly, to be at ease, to have people that make you feel at ease. This is a kind of friendship that we may be most familiar with. Having people around us that are similar to us and that we can share things with. They may be very similar to us, we may not be able to learn a lot from them, but still it's good to feel at ease, to inspire each other a bit. But then there's another kind of friendship in Buddhism of those who are morally and spiritually further than us. And this is a very highly appreciated kind of friendship in Buddhism. The Buddha talked about this quite a lot, and he called this the Kalyana Mitta, or the literally it means a beautiful friend, but it's usually translated as a good friend. A good friend. Kalyana Mitta. You may have heard of this word. And these are very important to have because they help us to grow in the moral, the meditative life, the mind, the mental training, and wisdom. So therefore, if we have a person like that in our lives, it can help us a lot. If we don't have such a person yet, then we should try to make an effort to find such people in our lives, whether they are our teachers or our friends or family. But we should have some people that we can look up to. Even the Buddha said that when he was enlightened, it is the belief of Buddhists that he was the most highly developed person in the world at that time when he became enlightened. So at that moment, he was still wondering, what do I have to look up to? He couldn't find anybody to look up to anymore because he had been so advanced in his spiritual progress. But he still thought of the teaching that he had discovered, the wisdom that he had discovered and learned, as something that he could look up to, that he could respect and honor. And later on, when the monastic community that he had built, that he had developed, became larger, he also saw that as part of something that he was able to look up to as well. So this kind of growth, even the Buddha, he knew. He said in that same text, he said that if you don't have anything or anybody to look up to, you are miserable. We all need something good. And that's an important point, because there are many professions in life, many contexts these days. Sometimes it's the news, sometimes it's the polarization in society. And we're learning about all these mistakes people make all the time. The mistakes politicians make, the mistakes that the people make, the criminals, the people on the street that make mistakes, or maybe sometimes the people in authority and other levels of society. We read and we watch all these kinds of mistakes and we doom scroll and we just get more of that kind of information. At a certain point, we stop looking for the good, and that's a shame. And that's why we have to, first of all, consume news, not too much, just enough, because there is such a thing as a mean world syndrome. That's really a thing. You can look it up. If you are watching too much news, then you will actually not be more informed, but you will actually be you have more distortions of the world because you have so gotten used to looking at all the faults and everything that goes wrong that you have developed certain distortions of the world, and that's what they call a mean world syndrome. It's not an actually mental illness, but it's something we should be cautious of. So that is just an example, but there are many. Even literature or television or movies are often tend to focus on what is all wrong about people, what is wrong. Not everything, of course, but many of that media and television and popular culture. So therefore, it's important that we learn to train ourselves to look at what is good, to look at what is great about people, to find strength in others. And that's where respect fits in the Buddhist practice, the Buddhist path of practice. That is where respect is so important. When I was training as a monk in the first years, I can remember clearly, there was we all were given a little a little notebook, not a laptop, but a real notebook. And that was given to us by our guides who trained us. And then we all had this notebook to write in, and they told us you have to write a good quality that somebody around you have seen in somebody. Every day you find a strength in somebody and you write it down. And the first days you write, every day you write one thing, right? First days you write about the people you're close to, the monks you are closest to, that you kind of like, that you kind of appreciate and like. But then after a while, you kind of run out of these these people. You have to come up with something new every day, right? So then you start to write about the people that you don't really know, but you kind of have to look at what can we learn from these people, you know. At a certain point, even these people run out, and the only people you're left with is the people you don't even want to look at, you know, you don't like at all. So this is a very good training that we learned in the first years of our monkhood. And this is just showing that we can train respect, and not just respect as a form of accepting others' opinion, just allowing people to have their opinion. That is part of it. But let's just look at the whole definition of respect first. In Thai, there is an expression, yom rap nap tu. Yom means to have nothing against the other person. Now, that is usually how people define respect these days. I respect your opinion. Just tell whatever you want. I may not be able to agree with it, but I respect it. That is the first step, yom. You have nothing against the other person. You're not holding any grudges. You're not being jealous or something. You just want to give them some space to express their opinion. Maybe you also believe in certain freedoms, but in certain social or certain legal freedoms or something like that. And that also takes as some part in that. But then it's going a little farther if you actually want to make a decision to learn about another person, to learn from another person. That is what we call rap. Not everybody, not every person may be the same. Some people you can learn more than others, but still, this is a good attitude that we can develop with everybody. Not goes a little farther. It means to want to learn all of their good qualities. Not means to really look at all their good qualities. And then to means to take these good qualities upon ourselves. Not to steal, but to really try to absorb whatever goodness another person has. You know, I regret that we don't often have Lompi Nicolas on these Saturday nights. The last time he was on was like 3 years ago or something. Lompi Nicolas, I think some of you know him. He's located in Azusa in California. He was one of my teachers, and he used to have this funny or this silly expression, this silly word that he said. He said, virtue doesn't come unpackaged. You know, that's a bit of a weird expression, but like you have certain products in the shop, and when you buy those products, you have to buy them with the package. The package is included. And he said, virtue is like that. You can't buy it unpackaged. In other words, what he meant to say with that is that virtues or good qualities of the heart and mind, they come with people. You may be able to read in books about these people, these good qualities, but eventually they come with people. You may be able to read a book about gratitude, and this book is like 500 pages big, right? Which is pretty big book these days for many people. But you will still not be able to really practice gratitude if you don't have any examples in your life. That's why it's so important to have examples. It gives you a standard to live by. And that's why respect is a sign of wisdom. You start to look for ways to really develop yourself by looking outside of your own frame. seeing what other people are doing, and then realizing that there's a lot you can still learn. So it is a good, I mean, this whole talk, if you can't remember any of this talk, just remember this one. This is really useful. Yom Rap Naptu. And you can really apply that in your life. Now, some people you might be able to learn less from than others, but still, the people, if you see some people that you really believe, you really acknowledge them for their good qualities, then you open your heart to them and you can learn in this way. There's in the Buddhist commentaries, they sometimes distinguish between respect for status and respect for seniority and respect for character. Respect for status is the most superficial. It's maybe referred to respecting a judge or respecting a doctor or respecting a policeman. But these still have some meaning to them because these professions, they come with a certain elements of sacrifice or certain things that are difficult to do, or certain responsibilities that are not always appreciated, or not always. Some people might say a judge, they get a very big salary. We don't have to give them much respect. But that's, if you think like that, there's no difference between a CEO and a judge. There has to be some difference. Some professions, they really come with a lot of responsibility. Or when you have respect for a doctor and you just don't just call him, hey doc, but you really respect that person, or you don't just call them by their first name, but you respect them as a doctor, you kind of give them some responsibility as well. When the queen, the last queen we had in the Netherlands, her name is Beatrix. When she became the queen back in the 60s or 70s, there was a custom there used to be a custom that you call the queen or the king of the Netherlands, you would call him Majesty, which is very common in the West. And then, because the previous Queen Juliana, she was like a child of the 60s and 70s. She was a free spirit, and she didn't want people to call her Majesty anymore. But when Beatrix came in power back in the 60s or 70s, was a little later than Juliana, she really wanted to make a point. So she said, everybody, you just call me Majesty. And then people asked her, why do you change what your predecessor already discarded, already abolished? And she said, it's my responsibility and my role to try to be majestic. So that's why you call me Majesty. It's similar to why many Thai people, they call the monks Lom Pi. It means something. The person who is addressed that way, they feel they have to try to live up to those standards. So this respect for status, respect for status, but there's also respect for seniority. And that is something that is sometimes overlooked, especially in the West. Respecting people who have some seniority is very important. You can see that this is still very much appreciated in East Asia. I think a little less in Southeast Asia, though, but you can still see it in the language. So respecting your seniors is important also in the monkhood, but we don't respect each other so much according to age, but more to ancienity, which means that people who are ordained before us, who were ordained before us, respect them for their experience. And basically, it comes down to respecting people for their experience and the things they might have learned. And not everybody who gets older gets wiser, but still it's good to be on the lookout for something to learn, because people who have been in this world before us, they might have something to share that you might not be aware of it. And the Buddha, he called respect and listening to your elders as one of the key foundation stones of a good society of prosperity. So this is important to keep in mind. But of course, the most important and deepest, most profound form of respect is respect for character. And all other forms of respect should lead up to this respect for character, respect for qualities, respect for a good heart and a sharp mind. There's different ways we can show respect. Now, some of these in Asia, they're very common, right? Sakara means to offer things. Puja means to physically pay respect, like bowing or showing your hands when you greet somebody. That is an example of respect, and that is showing respect. But there's also knowing respect. Knowing respect means to give credit where credit is due, to, like I talked about, this realization. But it's also an emotional component to that, emotional part to that. Like really devoting yourself, being loyal to people. Garukara is that, devotion and loyalty. And in total, this is a very good formula of respect. These are different aspects that are all important. But it's interesting to note that in the West, we tend to focus mostly on knowing respect, and in the East, mostly on showing respect. But both are important. So we keep that in mind. There should be different ways to express our respect, just like a husband might express his love to his wife by giving flowers. It's maybe very traditional, but that's a way of showing something. If you never show something, sometimes the feeling might be lost. So showing respect is a good thing. It isn't just something we do out of tradition, but it helps you to grow and to reconfirm those qualities that are important in your heart and mind. So to summarize, respect is the first step in the spiritual life, one of the first steps. And like I said, even the Buddha respected the Dhamma, or the teaching, the truth to which he was awakened. So respect helps us in many ways. To end with, I would like to give a few examples. There is the famous story of the Venerable Sariputta, who was one of the closest students of the Buddha. And he's in Thai altars, in Thai, like the altar of the Buddha image, right? There's often a monk sitting, there's often an image of a monk that is showing his respect for the Buddha, sitting next to the Buddha image. That image is the Venerable Sariputta when he had already become a monk. Here you can see him as a spiritual wanderer. He had not become a monk yet. He's sitting at the right here, at my right. And at the left, you can sit another monk. His name is Venerable Asati. Now, Venerable Asati, he was one of the first people to become enlightened under the Buddha. But he was a man of few words. So when the Venerable Sariputta asked him, when he first saw him, he was very much inspired, not so much by his words at first, but mostly by his character, his appearance, the way he looked and the way he walked. Everything seemed so mindful and so inspiring. And so he wanted to ask him more, and then Venerable Asati gave a famous said a few famous words, which we can talk more about later at some other possibility, at some other occasion. But the point is that after that, Venerable Sariputta quickly became a monk. And he had always kept in mind that the Venerable Asati, though he was not a well-known monk, he was one of the first monks under the Buddha, but he was not very well known. He was not famous for his teachings that much. Not that we know. Not that is written in the Buddhist text. He seemed to have not a very big role. But even though that was the case, the Venerable Sariputta never forgot him. He always honored and respected him. Wherever he was, he would always try to find out, where is the Venerable Assaji residing? Where is he staying now? Is he at the east or the west or the north or the south? And he would bow to that direction, and in that way honor his teacher. That was the respect that the Venerable Sariputta showed. It was a gratitude, but also a certain form of respect. And on a similar note, he would also always find ways to learn and to be humble. There was once a young monk, which we call a novice, a young samanera or a young novice. He told the Venerable Sariputta, your robe, it's not quite right. Your robe, the way you are dressed, it's not quite right. You should correct it. And then the Venerable Sariputta, he said, thank you, teacher. He was very much appreciative of that comment. So there's many instances in his life where the Venerable Sariputta showed respect and gratitude. And this is just an example from the ancient texts. We can also find an example in the more modern age in the person of Kunyai Ajahn, the nun who founded our temple. Kunyai, whom we just commemorated the day that she passed away, right? Which was just passed. And then that moment when the Venerable when Kunyai when she was in our temple, she was actually always very respectful to people, and she showed a lot of humbleness and respect, which made her more respected by others, because everybody knew that she was very advanced in her meditation, but at the same time she was not arrogant about it, which is what made her so popular with the people. So this is also another example, another person and she was always very eager to learn as well. She was always trying to learn more things and learn about the good qualities of other people. These are some examples in which in Thai culture, respect is shown. So you can see that there is the showing of respect to the monks, which is very, very deep bow. But when you show respect to your parents or your teachers, there is also a certain level of respect. When you show respect to somebody who is your peer, who's somebody on a similar level than you are when it comes to the things that I mentioned before, the seniority or the status or the character, then you can show respect in this way. So these are different levels of respect that you can distinguish in Thai society. And I think you can find similar kinds of different gradations, different forms of appreciation in other cultures. But this is a very good way to see that you can express respect in many ways, and it helps you to learn, it helps you to grow. It's an important thing that we should note, that the why, which the Thai people call the why, right? The showing of respect with your hands. In the time of the Buddha, it already existed. It was called the Anjali. And very often it is said that this is a form of respect that originated in the offering of a lotus. Well, it may be difficult to tell whether that is the real origin, but regardless, it does show that this is a very important thing. This is a very important form of culture that you can really literally find in every single Buddhist community in the world. So it's very fundamental to Buddhism. So even in countries where Buddhism has been suppressed a lot, like in mainland China in the past, in the Neo-Confucian or communist period, you can still see this still alive, these forms of respect. So this is very shows how much we can learn just by, like, for myself, just bowing to a senior monk or to a Buddha image feels very transforming for me. It never feels to me like something I'm obliged to do. It always feels very healing and transforming to me. Even though I come from a very egalitarian background, the Netherlands is very egalitarian. Everybody is equal. Even the prime minister goes biking to his work. But that doesn't mean that we can use these different good forms of culture to grow and to foster to progress in our lives. This is going a little farther. To prostrate is a little bit is not very familiar to us in the West, but it's something you can learn about, and if you are familiar with it, you might find that it's very healing and very transforming. Normally, we bow 3 times in ceremonies for the Buddha, his teaching, the Dhamma, and his community, the Sangha.